I'm not having to try and say, this is why we think it's important that we should provide support for our employees around mental health, or this is why we think diversity, equity, inclusion is important and we should focus on it. I think we've kind of put those arguments to bed to a certain degree, that you have to look after your employees, you have to focus on diversity to get them the best talent from the different communities. So I think I'm excited I don't have to keep making that argument. I think it does then put the response back on us to now come up with some really good solutions. True. And also I think to demonstrate the return on investments. I think we've really won the argument of why it's important, but we need to demonstrate how much it's important and why we need to continue investing in it. So I think that's an interesting point to be in. I think that's where data is your friend. You have to be able to demonstrate with data that I'm making an investment finance. Sorry, I'm spending your money or spending the company's money, but actually this is what I believe we will get from it, and here's how I'm going to hopefully show you that actually is a worthwhile investment. And actually, if it isn't, do something else.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Dominic Cole-Morgan, who's the Senior Vice President of Total Rewards at Scotiabank. During the episode, we discuss how Scotiabank is boosting employee engagement, motivation, and wellness. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Welcome to the show, Dominic. How are you?
I am great. How are you, Chris?
Not too bad, not too bad. People might be a bit, your accent may not give it away where you're based right now. So tell everyone where you're tuning in from, first and foremost.
I am coming in from very sunny Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Nice.
So yeah, I am not a native Canadian, as you can tell.
No, I just wanted to point that out for everyone. But we'll get into a bit more of that later. But tell everyone a little bit more about you personally and your journey to where we are now in this current role.
Yeah, perfect. I am my job title is Senior Vice President of Total Rewards at Scotiabank here in Canada. And for those of people who don't know Scotiabank, it's actually one of the biggest Canadian banks and one of the biggest banks in the world. We are all through the Americas and around various locations around the globe. And I'm privileged to lead a number of teams here at Scotiabank in HR. So I lead the total rewards team, which is workforce compensation and the exec compensation bit, of course, you never escape that. I also have benefits and wellness in my portfolio as well, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and organization design. So it's a little bit of an unusual portfolio.
Yeah, that's where you threw people off there. They're like, what?
Yeah. What?
Yeah, exactly. How did you end up in Toronto? And then we'll jump into the more direct role.
Actually, I just got a phone call. It was I was working in London office. I'd previously worked for a UK company, and I was in a London office. And the phone rang one evening. It was quite late in the evening, and it came up as Ontario. And I was like, well, that's weird. So I ignored it, and then it rang again. I answered it, and it was a search firm, and they were looking for someone to head up the total rewards function at Scotiabank. And I was like, well, I'd never even heard of this company before, so but interested enough to have the conversation. And then before you know it, you're on a plane coming over for an interview with the head of HR and the CEO. And then before you know it, after that, you're flying over to take up the job, and all your goods are sitting somewhere in a boat floating across the Atlantic. So it all happened very fast. But I'm here because I actually got a call from a search firm. But why did they message
people in the UK? Or was it just about you had the specific background they were looking for in terms of experience?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I had some financial services background. I think I was the only candidate, so I don't think I was like sort of handpicked globally. I'd like to know the case, but I'm not quite sure that's what happened. But I think I probably ticked a few of the boxes, so they obviously thought that it was worth an investment of flying me over to Toronto to meet with the CEO and the CHRO. And having met everyone here and heard what they were trying to do and sort of what they thought was important, it felt like a good fit for me and hopefully a good fit for them.
Yeah. Did you have what was your situation at the time? Did you have family at the time or anything like that?
Yeah, myself and partner moved over. So there was no children to be relocated, which makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
There's two of us to come, which is
how did you break it to your partner? How does that conversation look?
Oh, gently, just sort of in stages.
Take them out for a nice meal. just break it.
I had this phone call may not go anywhere. Then it's like, well, I'm going to get interviewed. It may not go anywhere. I think they might offer me the job, but we can think about it. And, you sort of do it in stages.
Yeah, you got to slowly. They're like, wait a minute, you're flying out now. You're flying out for interview. Let's get a bit more serious. Nice. So you settled in well, though. And as I mentioned to you when we first spoke, I travel quite a lot over Toronto. It's such a great city. So much going on, and you're really at the heart of everything where you're based.
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
no, it's great. Actually, I have to say, it's there's a lot going on. I mean, the winters can be pretty brutal. So
yes, I've heard. My family members
the
over there like
digging
out their front door to get out of the house for the day. We don't understand that in the UK.
Yeah. Nothing quite prepared me for that, but the summers are amazing. So this weekend I was away, went to a cabin on a lake for a few days. Nice. It was a long weekend, and so it's just beautiful. Kayaking Amazing. And things and cycling. It was fantastic.
Well, Canada's so big; it would take you a whole lifetime just to explore it.
Oh yeah, I've barely scratched the surface.
Exactly.
I mean, pandemic didn't help, of course.
Yeah, of course. So how did this role of DE&I and org design fall on your plate?
Yeah, I mean, the two bits came to me sort of in different ways. The diversity, equity, inclusion came because previously at Scotiabank, we had brought together the diversity, equity, inclusion, and the performance management teams. And then we had a bit of a restructure, which we knew would be temporary because we were, sort of recruiting into a role, but they needed a home for performance management for a temporary period. So I got that and got DE&I as like the bonus prize. And then when the restructure happened and we decided we were going to move performance management out, I just loved working with the DE&I portfolio. I love the team. I love what they were trying to do. I could see that there were some really interesting connections and intersections with policies and benefits that we could start making. Because I mean, one of the most important ways you communicate your culture and what you think is important is through what you put your money behind in your benefits or your policies. So because we'd started to make those connections, that my boss decided, actually, let's leave it with you, DE&I, and actually the teams have worked amazingly, and we've done, I think, a lot more on the DE&I side because of that combination than we had it sat separately.
Yeah.
And org design came because actually from day one when I joined, I kept going, where's the org design team? Who does org design?
They're like, fine, stop talking about it. You got it now. You've been talking about it enough. Here you go.
You go and sort it out then. You set up a team.
You're like, oh no.
So be careful what you wish for sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, it's great actually.
How do you prioritize your time then? Just out of curiosity, across these roles.
I have a fantastic set of direct reports, to be honest. So I'm able to rely on my team to do so much of the heavy lifting, and they do a lot of the thinking in terms of how we join up different areas, say DE&I with benefits or wellness and mental health. That I'm able to sort of drift across the surface of these very talented people and show up at presentations with the board and present our good work. But they are, I'm just lucky. I have a fantastic team, I'll be honest.
That's the whole point, right? You have them there to lean on their expertise. You don't need to be an expert on every single detail of every single thing.
I recruit. So I have lots of actuaries in my team, and what they do, I could never do.
What would you say? Because we had such a good conversation when we first met. What would you say is the projects that you're working on now, or that you've been working on, that you're most proud of, that you could share with our listeners today?
Yeah, I think I love what we've done. I mean, I think through the pandemic, two things. Well, there's the pandemic and various other social changes. So I think two things emerged as being a priority for my team, but within HR more broadly. And one was around the mental health support. Because we were, well, first of all, the pandemic shifted from physical support, people being sort of cleaning the offices and masking protocols, etc. I never thought I would ever have to sort of write about a policy about how you remove your mask at your lunch, but you end up doing anything in HR during the pandemic. But so there was mental health support, and then there was really, I think, the world waking up to the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way it never had previously, to be honest. And I think that was partly due to some really tragic events like the murder of George Floyd, but also I think an emerging workforce demographic which saw this as much more important. So those two things have really been a large focus of the activities for us and the changes we've made over the last couple of years. Now, all other bits in my portfolio didn't stop, so we still do all the exec pay and we do pay review and everything else. But I think two areas, which would be mental health support and the support for diversity, equity, inclusion, and specifically targeted to diversity-seeking groups would be two areas we've doubled down on. I think if I look back, I'd say I'm really proud of as well.
Well, walk us through the well-being side, because that was kind of one of the silver linings that came through the pandemic, right? Is this focus on well-being? You know, before it was like a nice to have topic that we spoke about now and again, and most employees weren't even aware that it even had a resource in this area, and most companies actually didn't even have anything in place, to be honest, which was quite shocking. What type of mental health support do you provide now? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, and it's really funny because we did shift in the pandemic from that very physical support to very quickly realizing that the mental health impact was probably going to be with us for longer and probably impact more people. It was almost like a twin pandemic. So we put in place a number of initiatives. One was we increased quite substantially our mental health coverage. So we increased that from $3,000 to $10,000 per person. It also includes eligible dependents as well, and that came from the realization that no one's like an island at work. So if you're having mental health problems, you need support. But if your family member, your spouse or your children is having problems as well, that is going to impact how you are able to work, how you're able to engage with the organization, how you feel. And so we extended the 10,000 to the employee, but also to eligible dependents as well. And it covers a huge range of different practitioners, counseling, psychotherapy, clinical family marriage counselors, also covers internet cognitive-based therapy as well. So we want to make it as holistic as possible in terms of the coverage, and as holistic as possible in terms of who it covered as well, because you're part of your family and you don't leave that at the door when you either log in home or you walk in through.
Well, you're actually at home with your family working, many people. So
well, yeah, and actually even more so in the integration of home and work was even greater during the pandemic, and since the way we work has changed. So we made sure that was covering the family members as well. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it was 100% altruistic from us as an organization, because I mean we want people to get the care they need. We want people to be able to get the support, but also we reflect that actually people with sort of, when you have mental health problems, you're not going to be as engaged with the organization, as productive. And also, if we could stop people ending up on long-term disability as well as a result of mental health claims, short-term and then long-term, then that was all benefit both for them, but for us.
So you also you're not just treating the symptoms; you're actually trying to find a solution. And the symptoms actually cost more money. Treating the symptoms costs more money, like you just mentioned. So it made sense on both sides.
Yeah. So we if you can stop people on long term, because they get those sort of long-term disability claims when it's mental health ones, they're very sticky. You break a leg, it's going to recover. You come back to the office, but mental health is the claims were so much more difficult to treat and to recover from, that actually, if we're able to stop people on that journey in relation to going off on short-term and long-term disability, it's great for them, but it's also great for the organization as well.
Yeah. I also noticed that you put in there the 5 personal days. Can you explain about that?
Yeah, so that was really around. We have a sort of certain vacation entitlement, but it was, people were loath to use their vacation entitlement for things like sort of treatment days, or even just going, I need time out of the office. So under Canadian legislation, you have to have a certain number of personal days. We made them paid, and we gave extra ones on top of that as well.
So you don't have to pay for them, but you chose to pay for them.
We chose to make them paid, so that people would feel that they would then have the permission, and also permit themselves to go and get the treatment they need. Or actually, if it was just, I'm going to take a walk by the lake today, or I'm just going to lie under my duvet for a day, that actually there was days that people could choose to do that without feeling they needed to use their vacation entitlement. So it was around that separation of vacation and and self-care, and also making sure they were paid as well, that people were able to not lose out financially as a result of taking those days. And it's been really popular. And we actually added in a new benefit, which you could buy more through our flexible benefits plan.
Okay.
And that was probably one of our most popular benefits for employees to purchase extra days, especially through mostly a lot of people how sort of managing children and that kind of thing, and having those extra days to be able to take off with their kids, or
so many things that
manage
just pop up, right? Like even my
Yeah.
wife's had to take a couple of those days recently with our daughter. We've got a call from the nursery and Robin's unwell. She's got to come home. My wife can't go to work that day. Before she would have to take a holiday.
Yeah.
That would come out of a holiday allowance. Now that's a personal day. So yeah, it really,
and actually,
really helps.
we also introduced a benefit this year where you get 5 days of emergency childcare. So if it was one of those days where you couldn't actually take the day off, we partner with a company, and you, subject to obviously availability within that site that day, you could drop your kid off at a proper registered childminding site for up to 5 days in the year, just for that whole emergency of I've got a really important meeting, I can't be home, but I need some childcare, or the childcare's fallen through. And that again has been very popular, and we're looking to extend it to elder care as well, because we realize that many predominantly women are that sort of squeezed of childcare and elder care. So we're looking to extend that to elder care as well.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people didn't really talk about before. Even I never really, I haven't experienced that, but my co-founder Shane, he's looking with his mum and dad, taking care of his elderly grandparents. And in other companies, that's not even something that really, I've never even heard. I didn't even know that was such a big challenge, because obviously until you are in that position yourself, you can't really fully appreciate that. But in many companies, it's not really recognized or even part of a conversation. So I think it's really important.
And I think it comes down to that whole sort of people are part of an ecosystem of their family, and the draws on your time are going to impact how you're able to do your job. So recognizing that people live longer, people have got probably elderly parents around for longer periods of time of your life, which is a blessing. But actually it does bring its own sort of requirements that we thought actually where we can, we'll extend things like the childcare thing, but actually to cover elder care as well. And also where we are able to, we extend some of our benefits to cover it. So we have some of our benefits where you can get second opinions for your parents in terms of medical and also some sort of medical pathways, because it's if you're worrying about your parents, then that will impact how you're doing your job.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just wondering what I know in North America, mainly in the US, I've seen that this whole healthcare system and benefits can be super complex with a million moving parts, much more complicated than it seems in the UK. From all of these things we're talking about, how do people access this? Like, what's the employee experience if I want to go and use some of these services? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it's through reimbursement, which actually makes it easier. So the Canadian system is less complex than the US system. I'm very glad of that.
Okay.
So it's more like the UK. There's socialized healthcare, but in terms of a lot of these, like say the psychotherapists or the family health counselors, it's much more around through a reimbursement. So it's a maximum limit that we set, and then you can get reimbursement. You submit it through our partner insurance company. They will then process the claim and then pay you into your bank account. So that bit's reasonably straightforward for employees, I think, to be honest. And we set up a number of our benefits like that. We introduced adoption and surrogacy benefits, and then again, that's on a reimbursement basis. So you submit your claim and you get reimbursed for it, rather than sort of having to go through and then sort of go through the insurance company. They pay directly, you pay, and then we pay you back.
Yeah. What have you found is the best way to go on? Sorry, go for it.
Well, no, I think it's confusing sometimes actually for employees, and this is something we need to grapple with in the HR world, is how do we make it easy for employees to know what they're eligible for?
I was about to say that. Yeah. That's the hard one.
We've introduced a whole bunch of extra benefits, and we have internet-based, cognitive-based therapy. We have employee assistance programs. We have telemedicine. And I think sometimes we've made the benefits and wellness landscape through quite crowded. And I don't think we've quite grasped about, if an employee is having a bit of a crisis, it's probably manifesting itself through not sleeping well or feeling a bit snappy with their family. And I think there's some work we need to do as an HR industry to work out how do we help employees go from I'm having a bit of a crisis to here's the best solution for you, because there's a bit in the middle where they're having to navigate that themselves, and I think it's not always as effective as it could be. So for me, in terms of sort of, you know, what I mean speaking to team is how do we help employees get to the market, as it were? You know, we've got all this product, but how do we get them to it?
What does it look like now? Is it like an intranet that they access, or is there an app? Okay.
So we have a total wellbeing website. So on our sort of internal intranet, you click on total wellbeing, and we've split it into 3 core themes. We call it health, wealth, and life.
Okay.
So health is much more medical. Wealth is around sort of the financial offerings and financial benefits, and life is mental health, EAP, employee assistance program, and other sort of elements that are more sort of social or emotional or mental health and well-being.
Yeah, that makes it a bit easier, because sometimes it's just gonna be like a minefield. Like I've worked in companies before, and I'm like, I didn't even know I had that. Or you throw everything at everyone, and then they don't look at anything, because they're like, that doesn't apply, exactly. That doesn't apply, that doesn't apply, doesn't apply. What does actually apply to Chris? Yeah. You know, have you done any work around that, like making sure you can build a persona around the employees? And making sure the communications
we've done some things around sort of almost like triaging. So if you know,
okay, yeah, makes sense.
If you're having a bit of a, you know, what if it's sort of, you know, sleep problems, or like almost like what question would an employee ask themselves, or what would they be experiencing, and then say, and here's the benefits that would align to that.
Okay.
We're not there yet, I don't think. I think we've still haven't quite got to that point where an employee would have, like, I don't know, not sleeping or feeling really anxious, and then know these are the 3 things we take you to. We've sort of limited it down to here's the column of things you should look at, but not quite down to here's the benefit that's going to here's the product or the offering that will benefit you best.
I think everyone's still working through that process, to be honest, and like, because it's interesting because we've had that process for so long with our customers, but we still yet as organizations haven't got there with our people as well, which is it's crazy when you think about that, right? That we didn't start by doing it with our people first, then our customers. If you imagine if we did it the other way around, it'd be pretty amazing to figure that out.
But I think with the focus on the importance of employees, I mean, employees have always been important, but I think companies are beginning to realize, especially through the pandemic and now, and with employees having a lot of choice, that actually we do need to treat our employees much more like customers, and have the product offering that they get to and market to them as well, to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm. On that point on that point, then, how are you recognizing employees in the company? Because that's something, I think that recognition piece, especially with distributed workforces now and the remote teams, is becoming even more important.
Yeah, and we have a really good program. We use Achievers. We call it Applause, and you can recognize people with or without points. And we have a number of categories, which I think is one of the beauties of it, because it's quite organic. So we can add in categories. Recently, we added one in about allyship. So a big focus of us as an organization has been around, I mean, diversity, equity, inclusion, but actually allyship, because to be a good ally to someone at work is something that every employee can get behind. So if you're an employee in a branch, you're not going to be recruiting lots of people. You're not going to shift our representation numbers, but you could be a fantastic ally to your team members and your colleagues. So we were able to slot in an allyship element of Achievers, where people could give applause points for demonstrating positive allyship. And we're also, you could add in ones around sort of doing the right thing as an organization. It's a big thing in financial services, which is sort of around employee behavior and ethics. So we are able to use the Achievers and Applause platform really quite dynamically to be the normal approach we have in relation to recognizing employees through points, which they then convert into to goods or services. But also we can add in and we can amplify different elements of it. And actually our CEO used it when I think we were a year into the pandemic. We used it as a recognition of actually, look, we've had a very unusual year, and we were able to distribute applause points across the organization globally in a way that you wouldn't be able to do with any other product, to be honest. If you're trying to do, I don't know, even pay people across the organization, it would not have been as straightforward as it was. but no, I'm not going to say we were able to do it at the touch of a button, but it wasn't a lot more than that. It was pretty straightforward to be able to get a message out and points across the organization.
What does it look like? Is it like a feed of everyone, or like is it by department, or like what is it?
I mean, you sort of, it's very simple, straightforward. You log in and there's who do you want to recognize, and you put
and you see your team, or you just type for any employee's name in there and you can find them.
You can do any employee names. You can do teams as well, and then it's what they recognize for. Who else do you want to tell? So you can actually inform other people. So you can tell their boss, or you can tell your own boss, and then you can either allocate points, or you pick a category, you can allocate points. And then it will appear in their news feed, their sort of feed, both in email, on the website, but
so they
also
get an email notification and a notification in an app.
Yeah.
Okay.
It appears in the Teams. It appears in the Applause website, which was part of our total.
I like the way. I like the fact that you branded it. By the way, so many companies miss the opportunity to create a brand around it, rather than just saying, "Hey, we've got this new platform." You actually took the time and energy to call it. Did you say Applause? What did you say it was called again?
Applause, yeah.
Applause. It's a great name. It's simple. It says what it is. It's great that you took the time and energy, because I think that's where companies fall short, is not doing the marketing and creating a brand and excitement and a buzz around it. Clearly, that was part of the strategy.
And I think we're integrating with different technology systems as well. So our normal sort of messaging system or video meeting system is Teams, and we've actually integrated it with that now.
So it comes up in Teams.
It appears in your Teams feed as well.
Interesting.
Now. So
nice.
So
you're not asking them to use yet another platform. So now it can appear where they already are.
Yeah, exactly. It just and it appears in email, but it appears there as well. So it comes up, so and so has been notified, and you can click on it, and then you can have a look. I mean, to be honest, the more tech savvy than me have got it working in apps and everything as well. So
that's what you want, right?
It's very straightforward. I mean, it's multiple platforms, but I think is the right thing, because if you're at your desk, you want to do it here, but actually, if you're on the streetcar or the train, you want to do it on your phone. So,
you want to be like similar again with our customer experience. You want it to, however they want it. If you want to watch it on the TV, you want it on the app. You want to make sure that you rather than trying to. I think so many companies make the mistake trying to drag people to them. Just go to them with every avenue. Same with our podcast, right? It's on Google, it's on LinkedIn, it's on YouTube, it's everywhere. It's even on Alexa. If you want to listen to the podcast on your Alexa, it's there. I wanted to make it easy for people, and have that customer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like banking's the same. It's like branches, phone, app, and it's what and your needs will be different. Sometimes you do need to go to the branch, or use the app will be fine.
What do the points equate to? How does that work? Because I know different companies have different processes. How does that work?
I mean, there's like a catalog of things you can choose from. So I think what some companies sort of make the mistake of doing is saying, well, this is, you can get 500 points is X. Whereas actually now, what you can save them up. You can then go onto the catalog and you can choose,
and then you choose
experiences or products, or even at times you can sort of put them through to charitable donations. We did that earlier. We've done that before. We have campaigns where people can allocate their points to a different charitable event. Say there's been a terrible happening in the world, we can then say, if you want to now, you can then click them through and you can donate them as cash to a charity.
What advice would you give to our listeners, the ones that are considering putting something like this in place? What are some of the questions they should be asking, or maybe even mistakes that you made along the way?
I'm fortunate enough that I joined probably after the mistakes were made. I think the advice would be, it's worth the investment of time to brand it, to promote it, and to really sort of demonstrate senior utilization of it as well. Because I think that's where it starts to get some traction, is when people see senior colleagues recognizing sort of other team members, and it really coming to life. I think sort of when we've had the CEO sending out the applause to the employees, it was reasonably straightforward, but it had huge traction. People were thought it had massive, enormous intrinsic value, that people were hearing from the CEO, recognizing that it's been a really difficult year for everybody, and we referenced mental health in that message as well. He referenced it. So I think seeing senior leaders using it is one of the key things, and then it just gets a life of its own.
Yeah.
To be honest.
How does it make you feel when you see that? When you see those messages?
I'm very proud of us as an organization in terms of that sort of inter-employee recognition. I mean, it's so important. And actually, employees see so much more of what other employees are doing than often their managers do. So if you have to give a vehicle for recognizing each other. So being a good ally, for example, I don't see my team members sometimes, and if someone else is seeing them being a great ally, I'd love to hear about it. So for me, it's really important to have this peer-to-peer and sort of intra-team recognition that you can really reward behaviors that the organization is trying to focus in on.
Yeah, I realized even personally as a leader, like when I had the whole team in the office, I would do that a lot because you'd have those triggers when you see someone, right? And you having conversations. And I realized that since we started working in a hybrid model, that because I didn't have those instances where you have that water cooler moment or by someone in the kitchen or just in the hallway, I wasn't doing it enough. And it's something that I actually become more conscious about, making an effort to recognize people. And I think that's where technology can play a part in that.
That's exactly right. And then you have to make it as simple as possible, like as fewer clicks as possible. So find the name, type in a reason, say who you want to do, click a number, and it's gone. If it's 50 clicks deep and 16 process steps, you're gonna lose the battle, which is, I think, where you have to you asked for advice earlier. Key one would just make it as easy and simple as possible to do the recognition.
Do you have things like what do they call them, like nudges for managers? Does it do like nudges?
You get reminded when you haven't been using your points.
That's what I mean. That's a good. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that's another good thing to have, where technology can help and give you a bit of a nudge. Say, Chris, you haven't recognized your team recently.
Yeah. Exactly.
go.
You must have done something.
Yeah. It's like, just start sending a good message, right? As well. So those are things that can help, because I don't think anyone doesn't intentionally not want to recognize their team. No. It's just, we want to make it as easy as possible.
But I think your point about not being in the office is a really good one, because actually it does get a lot less easy to sort of yell across the desk, fantastic job or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you have to find alternative ways of doing it, and that's probably going to be how we're working.
But also that public display, right? Like the fact that you can do it publicly, and CEO could do it, and the whole organization can see it. There's something about that that's really. I remember when I worked in sales, and we had these old school like ticker boards, like almost like in the financial district, and it was a 5-story building, and it was mainly sales staff. And whenever you got a deal, your name would go across the board, and it would have the deal that you've done and the monetary value of the deal and the company that you've just booked in, and the whole company would celebrate, because every floor has one of the boards, and they can see that. And I remember how people used to look forward to that moment. Like sometimes it was worth more than the deal, because you go to lunch and everyone's like, "Oh, Chris, we saw your name earlier, well done." And then the CEO comes down and thanks you. But it was like this public display of recognition that I remember. It was very old, outdated way of doing it, but it worked. I just remember, and I remember there was times when my team members would be like, "Chris, my name's not been up on the board yet. I got a deal earlier." Like, that's how important it was. The people would be like, "I want my name up there," and it means a world of difference. You can see the energy that it gives people when they're
and the way our system works is actually you can say who it goes to, so you can make it more public. You could send actually this notification to your broader team, or not, because some people might be like, "Oh, don't do it, I'm too embarrassed." And so you have you can sort of gauge the reaction.
That's true.
Are they going to hate this, or are they going to love it? And who should know about it?
We had those same people though. There were people that, you're right. There's a couple of people that come to mind that were like, hated it. They were like, "Oh," because the attention, everyone coming over, they're like, "Leave me alone, I want to get back to work."
Whereas there's sort of like something appearing just in your desktop of going, did a great job, here's some points or whatever it is. Would mean a lot for that employee, just to sort of quiet recognition. Yeah,
I like the fact that you can customize it to make it really personal as well, because each manager knows their team more than anyone else, right? And you can personalize the experience they get on the other end, as opposed to something generic as well. So I think that's also a massive part of it, rather than just monetary value or just a voucher or some of the traditional things that you can actually say, actually, you know what, I'm going to give that to charity, and because that really is what motivates Chris, because he wants to do that. I think that's a massive part of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, the sort of I suppose fungibility of what you can use it for is really important, because I've always thought that long service awards where after 25 years
get a
you
watch.
get like
get a watch.
Yeah, you're like, well, you might have 20 watches already or not wear a watch. So,
I remember in my previous company, by the way, there was like a 10-year. Like after this many years, you get like this watch, and then you get that watch. And I was like, I remember at the time thinking, I was like, not everyone wants a watch. like I wasn't looking forward to getting this fancy watch. I just remember the excitement on the floor. I was like, I'm sure there's many people like me that don't care about this watch. Everyone's so excited about getting.
And then it has no value to you. I mean, even if that watch was £500 or dollars, it's worthless to you. So I mean, the fungibility of what you can use it for is really important, because then people get what they want.
Yeah,
it might be a spa day, it might be a it might be a watch,
it might be a day off.
It might be a coffee maker.
Exactly. I think it's best not to guess. What are you looking forward to? Before I let you go, like what are you most excited about moving forward in terms of what's coming up, what you're working on?
I mean, I think I'm actually really excited for HR as an industry at the moment. I think there's kind of like our time has come and we have to embrace it. So I'm actually, I'm excited that as an organization, I'm not having to, and I'm sure there's so many of your listeners' organizations, I'm not having to try and say, this is why we think it's important that we should provide support for our employees around mental health, or this is why we think diversity, equity, inclusion is important and we should focus on it. I think we've kind of put those arguments to bed to a certain degree, that you have to look after your employees, you have to focus on diversity to get them the best talent from the different communities. So I think I'm excited I don't have to keep making that argument. I think it does then put the response back on us to now come up with some really good solutions, and also I think to demonstrate the return on investment. So I think we have to say, okay, I'm now spending all this focus on mental health support. What are we going to get from it as an organization, both for employees, but for the company, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, or changing our benefits, or improving different terms. I think we've really won the argument of why it's important, but we need to demonstrate how much it's important and why we need to continue investing in it. So I think that's an interesting point to be in. I think that's where data is your friend. You have to be able to demonstrate with data that I'm making an investment finance. Sorry, I'm spending your money or spending the company's money, but actually this is what I believe we will get from it, and here's how I'm going to hopefully show you that actually is a worthwhile investment. And actually, if it isn't, do something else.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much more I want to get into with you, but we're running out of time. So we have to do
we'll have you back again.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2, because I feel like there's so much we haven't even got into. But I appreciate you coming on the show. And very last question, what would be your parting advice to sort of HR leaders that are going to be sitting in your seat one day? And then where can people connect with you personally if they want to reach out and say hello?
Well, I'll ask the second one. So LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only Dominic Cole-Morgan on there, so it's quite easy to find me. It's the advantage of having a slightly unusual name. I think actually, to be honest, on the sort of what advice, I think don't be scared to ask the difficult questions. So I mean, I think something we did recently about sort of with the mental health spend, and it was great to spend this money, but we did it with the sort of assumption that we were going to start to see different behaviors around short-term disability and long-term disability. So we've been tracking that, and actually so far we're seeing it. So I think ask the difficult questions of yourself of, okay, if I do this, what's the benefit to the organization? How am I going to prove it? Because often we do, we're not sure if it's going to work. And actually, we have the conversation with your finance colleagues, your business colleagues, and say, look, we're going to try this. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. But I think we're often scared to try something new in case it fails. But you know what? Sometimes things fail. I mean, business products fail.
100%.
So sometimes HR things will fail. And as long as we sort of go in with okay, this is our hypothesis. This is maybe how we're going to test it. And if it isn't working, then we're going to roll it back.
The alternative, unfortunately, is you end up doing the same thing you're doing anyway, over and over again, or nothing. Yeah, exactly. It's a similar argument that when people ask me about, Chris, I want to quit my job and start a company, and they have to have this perfect plan. that everything's going to work. And I say it doesn't work. Like what HR Leaders was when me and Shane started the company is a million miles away to what it is now. We've constantly iterated and pivoted consistently. And that's kind of, we got to be bold. We have to be brave.
Yes.
And try and do things and communicate with people. Say, actually, this doesn't work, but that's okay. And then we try something else. It's interesting. You're right. In other functions and departments, that's okay. Sales, marketing, etc. But in HR, it's, we're so worried about the opinion or the backlash. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I have to say, finance and the data teams have been my friend in this. I've asked for investments of money, and we've looked to prove it, and the data team helped me look at the data that helps to say actually it is or isn't working. So those are my two best friends at work, finance and data.
Amazing. Well, look, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate you. It. Sounds like you're doing some incredible work. For everyone listening, those links are already below, so make sure you go and follow Dominic on LinkedIn now. Connect there. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, depending on what platform you're on. And apart from that, I wish you all the best, and I'll see you again soon. Dominic, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed myself.